Today we are going to solve absolute value inequalities, which are very similar to what we did yesterday. The difference is that you, instead of having an equal sign in between, you have a less than or greater than sign in between. Process starts out the same. You have to make sure you have the absolute value by itself. Once you do, you make two different equations. One that looks exactly the same as the original, and one, you keep what's inside the absolute value the same. You flip the inequality and you negate the other side. And then to solve for n, we subtract 2. So we say n is less than 0 and n is greater than -4. Less than 0 means I'm going to have an open circle at 0. Greater than -4 is open circle at -4. Any numbers less than 0 and greater than -4, which is in between. And that's it there. At this point, I'm going to do some of the more difficult ones, so let's go to the next page. I will go to the next slide. Okay, let's look at let's do 13. All right, absolute value is by itself, so I separate it into two equations. First one looks the same. Second one, I flip the inequality and negate the other side. To solve for x, I'm going to subtract 8. So I'll get 9x is greater than 45. And then divide by 9, you get x is greater than 5. On this side, I'll subtract that 8, so we'll get 9x is less than -6. Excuse me. -61. Divide by -9. That is about -6.8. So I need an open circle at 5. And I need an open circle at -6.8. Any value is greater than 5, so that's away. And less than -6.8, so I'm going towards the arrows here. Let's look at 15. Now what I want you to notice on 15. 15 says an absolute value has to be greater than a negative number. Well, an absolute value is always greater than a negative number, so your answer, if you notice it right away, is just all real solutions. Everything works. For shading, you just shade the whole thing. There's no circles or anything. Let's look at 17. 17, the first thing I'm going to have to do is to get the absolute value by itself. So I'm going to subtract the 3. So I'll have 2, and then absolute value of 9 plus n is less than or equal to -4. Divide by 2, so 9 plus n is less than or equal to -2. And this says, if you look, an absolute value has to be less than a negative number. An absolute value is never less than a negative number. So in this case, there is no solution. And you do not shade anywhere on 17. Let's see, I want to do one more here. Let me see if I can find one that I want to do that. Let's look at number 18. Okay, number 18. First thing I'm going to do is add that 2. So I'll have 8. Absolute value of -2v is greater than 32. Divide by 8, so I'll have absolute value of -2v is greater than 6. 4. From there, we separate into two equations, one that looks exactly the same, and one. Switch the inequality, negate the sign. To solve for v here, I'm going to divide by -2. When you divide by a negative and you have an inequality, you have to remember to flip the inequality like I did. Same thing on the other side, since I'm dividing by a -2. I need to remember to flip the inequality. So I'll get v is greater than 2, so open circle at 2. V is less than -2. And I shade towards the arrows. And we will finish the rest of these problems up in class tomorrow.